Is gluten bad for you? You might have heard about folks choosing a gluten-free diet for health reasons and wondered, is gluten really harmful? Well, the answer is a bit tricky. It varies from person to person. Generally, gluten isn't harmful unless you have specific health issues like celiac disease. For most folks, eating gluten is perfectly fine. In fact, removing gluten from your diet might not be good for your health because it can lead to a lack of essential vitamins and minerals. In this video, we'll explore how gluten affects the body and help you understand whether it's genuinely bad for you. Let's begin with, what is gluten, and is it actually bad for you? Gluten is a type of protein present in wheat, barley, and rye grains, as well as in foods made from these grains like bread, soy sauce, malt vinegar, and beer. When it comes to baking, gluten acts like a sticky substance that binds ingredients together. Despite common beliefs, gluten isn't harmful unless you have a particular health condition that demands a gluten-free diet. Let's now look into potential negative effects of gluten. For many folks, gluten is not a problem, and having gluten in your diet is actually better than cutting it out. But for some people with specific health issues, gluten can cause problems. In less than 1% of individuals with celiac disease, gluten can set off the immune system to attack the lining of the small intestine. This leads to issues like poor nutrient absorption, inflammation, villus atrophy, and a wide range of possible symptoms. This brings us to the conditions that gluten could worsen. A gluten-free diet can be helpful for certain health conditions, with the most well-established one being celiac disease. However, there is limited or ongoing research on how gluten affects many other health conditions. Now, let's learn about celiac disease. In 1941, researchers found out about the gluten protein and a diet without gluten as a way to manage celiac disease. Celiac disease is an autoimmune condition where the body's defense cells mistakenly attack the lining of the small intestine when gluten is eaten. It's an inherited condition, passed down through genes, and the only effective treatment is a strict, lifelong gluten-free diet. On the other hand, non-celiac gluten sensitivity, or NCGS, also known as gluten intolerance, occurs when someone experiences a reaction to gluten without having an autoimmune response or wheat allergy. This condition has gained recognition relatively recently, and there is ongoing debate about it. Some scientists propose that factors other than gluten, such as amylase-trypsin inhibitors and FODMAPs, which stands for fermentable oligosaccharides, disaccharides, monosaccharides, and polyols, might also play a role. Furthermore, it's important to compare wheat allergy with celiac disease and gluten intolerance. Unlike celiac disease and gluten intolerance, individuals with a wheat allergy don't react to gluten specifically. Instead, they experience an allergic response to wheat itself. It's interesting to note that despite their wheat allergy, they can still consume gluten from non-wheat sources like barley and rye. However, because of the commonality and accessibility of gluten-free products and menus, many people with wheat allergies choose to opt for gluten-free options. So, what about other inflammatory conditions? Apart from celiac disease and non-celiac gluten sensitivity, some scientists suggest that a gluten-free diet might help with specific inflammatory conditions. There's not much research to fully back the idea of a gluten-free diet helping with conditions like arthritis and inflammatory bowel disease, or IBD. People have also looked into whether a gluten-free diet could be beneficial for other conditions like endometriosis, Hashimoto's thyroiditis, autism spectrum disorder, and more. However, currently, there isn't enough evidence to strongly recommend a gluten-free diet for these conditions. This brings us to another important question. Is a gluten-free diet recommended for irritable bowel syndrome? Irritable bowel syndrome, or IBS, is a common stomach issue. Some suggest avoiding gluten in your diet to help with IBS, but the evidence on this is unclear. Scientists believe there isn't enough proof to recommend a gluten-free diet for IBS. On the other hand, there's more evidence supporting the benefits of a low FODMAP diet for IBS. So, when should you consider going gluten-free? Before you cut out gluten from your diet, make sure you get tested for celiac disease. Why? Because to accurately detect celiac disease, you need to be consuming gluten. For people with celiac disease, avoiding gluten is crucial. They must be extra careful about avoiding any tiny bits of gluten in their food, like using separate kitchen tools and avoiding shared cooking oils. This strictness is necessary to stay healthy. Living as if you have celiac disease when you don't can be tough socially and in terms of what you can eat. But if you actually have celiac disease and don't stick to a gluten-free diet, it can seriously harm your health. If you're experiencing symptoms like bloating, nausea, brain fog, or digestive issues, it's important to speak with a healthcare provider about getting tested for celiac disease or gluten intolerance. Moreover, are there people who can eat gluten without problems? Most people don't have any issues eating gluten. If you've been diagnosed with celiac disease or gluten sensitivity, it's important for you to avoid gluten. There are a few other health conditions that might also improve by avoiding gluten. But before making any changes to your diet, it's advisable to consult with a healthcare provider. To give you some perspective, only a very small percentage, less than 1% of the general population has celiac disease. We don't know as much about gluten sensitivity, but based on self-reported studies, it seems to affect somewhere between 0.5% and 13% of people. Considering these numbers, the majority of people can safely include gluten in their diet without any issues. In fact, following a gluten-free diet without a medical reason can be harmful to your health, so it's generally recommended to stick to a regular diet unless there's a valid reason to avoid gluten. If you have any concerns, it's always a good idea to discuss them with a healthcare professional. So, in summary, gluten is a protein found naturally in wheat, barley, and rye. Choosing a gluten-free diet doesn't automatically mean it's healthier for everyone. In reality, going gluten-free can lead to nutritional gaps and an increased risk of heart disease. It's important to note that the gluten-free diet is beneficial mainly for individuals with specific medical conditions, like celiac disease or gluten intolerance. For others without these conditions, it might not offer any health advantages.
Thank you for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Watch more videos by clicking on the video here.